Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Lake Monticello Water Safety Town Hall. My name is Mark Luger, and you'll see plenty of me later on. At this point, I'd like to introduce Tom Schauder, our General Manager.
Good evening. I'd just like to welcome everybody and thank you for coming tonight. I would like to introduce, as a general, our board of directors are in the audience, so they're attending here. Mark Luger is our director of facilities. He's going to facilitate as we go through this. Our chief of police is here. Just in case anybody gets unruly, we want to make sure Tony's here. Kidding, just a joke. But so Tony heads up, works closely with the safety and security and the water safety patrol. So the chairman of safety and security, Ray Weimer, is here. Water safety patrol. So we have lots of folks here. Just wanted to emphasize, we wanted to make sure we listen to the community. We put out an email, IP address so folks can give us input. Mark will talk a little bit about that later. We want to listen to everybody this evening, and then we'll assess it. The goal is to assess it, get to the committee, get it to the right folks at Water Safety Patrol, so that we can provide our board of directors with factual information and the best information so that they can make a decision what's best for the community. So just again, wanted to thank everybody for their participation, and I'll turn it over to Mark.
Well, again, welcome everyone, and good evening. I have to say, having the water, this town forum, after the last 2 weeks, I can think of nothing better than a nice warm evening cruising, watching a sunset. But they're predicting snow for the weekend for those of you that aren't in my line of work. So we welcome you. Welcome to the board. Welcome to our committees. The board directed at the recommendation of the Water Safety Committee to hold a town hall on water safety topics. For several months, we've been putting out emails and publications about this, and so I want to walk through the format and the footprint this evening and kind of set expectations for you. Next slide, please. Next. So our agenda for this evening is really just quickly go through the purpose of the town hall, kind of the process. We'll take a look at some Lake Monticello facts and figures that are out there. We'll summarize the emails that were received to date. We'll kind of summarize those issues. Then we will then open it up to the list of speakers. So we set expectations. If you had not signed up with the executive office, and I'd confirm that you're actually here this evening, if you're not on that list, you will not be asked to speak. It is not a public open forum other than those people that registered to speak. So I want to make sure we set that expectation up early. And we're looking for civil discussion. It is not a question and answer type of forum. This is really to inform the board and these committees about topics and issues of water safety concern that are in our community. We have a lot going on. We've got a lot of boats out there, and I'm very pleased tonight that the turnout and the people that signed up to speak, they have a passion on these topics and want to hear their views. Next slide, please. You know Tom. We talked about him already, right? Next, please. So let's talk a little bit about the purpose of town halls. You've seen these through political campaigns for local and civic issues. This format is very much the same. We want to know and understand and listen to provide the board and these committees feedback on topics that people have a passion to. The board is interested in these things. The reason I am up here and not the board members, so just so we understand, this is not a board meeting. We will be capturing notes and providing feedback to the committees, and that will go to the board. So this is not a structured, formal meeting. as a board of directors. This is a town hall for your input. People are passionate about these topics. And so on that, we expect that there'll be civil discussion and let the person provide their point of view, their opinion, their comments on their topics. And so as long as we all understand that when they have the floor, it is their time for comments. We'll not tolerate any noise from the audience. You're here as a guest and or the speakers. So we expect that you'll be accordingly. Otherwise, I get my friend over here, Tony, to help out. So we'll take a look at this. We really want to understand everybody's viewpoints. And we know that this ranges in different areas. So I want to emphasize that good communication flow to the board, to these committees, and we want to listen to comments. Next slide, please. A little bit about the lake and the fact. So for those of you that are new to this, Lake Monticello was developed around 1969. We have 350 acres in the lake and 22 miles of shoreline. The lake serves as the watershed for the surrounding community. So a lot goes on here. And we have a beautiful asset in the lake, as well as a golf course in our community. The one thing that I'm particularly proud of when I was gathering facts and figures on this, that in the history of the lake, there have been no fatalities. And that is not something that many of our facilities in the state of Virginia can claim. So we're pretty proud of that. The lake is managed by a set of rules. As you as boaters or lake owners should have had a set of rules. Those rules are online and available to you at any time. And not only do we have rules, we have a set of markers that provide U.S. Coast Guard safety markers that provide us guidance in how we will operate on the lake. Next slide, please. The lake buoy placement, and this is a little bit challenging for even those of us that laid it out. So we have 2 turn buoys on each end of the lake. We have 15 no-wake markers, cove buoys, and we have 12 shallow water buoys. And some of you may have found out where those areas are by trolling too close to the shoreline. It's always a very disturbing sound, but this is where they are on the lake. The lake operations that falls under the Facilities and Maintenance Department maintains these markers. So when we get calls that a marker is shown up in your front lawn or at the end of your dock, a member of my team would pick this up and place it back in its respective location. Those locations are GPS marked. So we try to make sure as close as possible that we get them back to where they belong. Next slide, please. What we've seen with the number of vessels through the years is that of the registered boats at the lake, when you look across there for where we have records from 2008 to 2021, the largest single growth by over 158% is non-powered watercraft. And that is a category of kayaks, paddle boards, things of that nature. So the growth has been tremendous there, and we've seen that in the kayak racks around the lake. Powered boats has remained relatively stable. It has only changed over 10 years by about 3.4%. So the power boats, being as it may, but I think the graph is pretty clear. From the registered boats that we keep data on at the marina, the non-powered watercraft has grown dramatically. And I think that's where a lot of the concern comes from the boaters and the people operating on the lake. Next slide, please.
Mark, does the 2020 color aberration mean anything, or is it just a PowerPoint?
No, that's it. We had a change in the way the lake systems that manage boats and so forth. So that was basically taking one number from one system and another from the other. But in a trend line, that's where we believe it is. We didn't have data in the same way it had been managed in prior years. The process is really this town hall, to receive input, to understand where people are coming from, get that to the board. This information will be passed to the Safety and Security Committee, the Lake Monticello Police Department, the Water Safety Team, and then the committees provide recommendations to the Board of Directors. So this is a very standard process as outlined by the community bylaws and the way we work. And the board would then take up motions and act upon those things. So this is the process. We're at the front end of that. We're collecting, and you're providing information to the board and these committees. Next slide, please. A summary of current rate girls. Now this, from my engineering friends, you know, I couldn't put any more text on this slide, otherwise I'd gotten all of it. But in general, you know, we have rules out there, life jackets, approved guides, way we operate, we have speed limits, we have a pattern that we follow on this particular lake. We use the regulatory markers as we talked about earlier. We have the no wake is the slowest possible speed to maintain steerage. And the reason I highlight that is we'll get to a minute. The last one is the waterfront property owners and guests shall swim no further than 50 feet. These will be the two primary topics that came in from the emails received. Next slide. What a transition. So the 15 emails, since we started publicizing this, came in from the community. Generically, the largest two were boating safety and education. And then the second category was that of wake effects. So as I alluded to, one, where you swim and swimming education, whether from your boat or from your dock, the proximity of boats to docks, and the effect of wake. The largest single comment was the number of people operating excessive speeds in the coves. So we'll just summarize that. Next slide, please. So we get to the forum, why you came this evening. Let's just talk a little bit about the ground rules. So I have a list of speakers that had previously checked in with Karis and or signed up prior to this evening. We'll just ask, I don't see a couple faces. So here's how this will work. I'll call your name. I'll welcome you up to this position. Please come up the sides to avoid any of the camera equipment and wiring that can be hazardous to your health. As you arrive up here, we have a timer, and each speaker will be allotted 5 minutes. That'll be controlled when you start speaking up here. The floor will be yours. So it is your opportunity to convey your opinion, your comments to the members here that take in these notes on the topic that is of concern to you. I'll call your name, so the first speaker will come up. I will also introduce the second speaker, and you'll wait your turn, but so that you know you're next, you're on deck, and we'll go through that in a particular manner. While the speaker has the floor, I expect you'll respect their opinion and their comments. If you elect to make comments, I'll ask them to pause, and I'll either ask you to leave the room or stop. It's important. It's in today's world, things are a little tense, but this is a time to listen, and I want to emphasize that for you. So you'll have 5 minutes. There is no question and answer to this. This is your opportunity, as you signed up, to present this to the board, and I will stay out of the way. Once you're done, we'll introduce the next speaker and the next person on deck, and we'll proceed through that till we've exhausted our list. Any questions about the format? Great. Let's get underway. I tried to check in ahead of time, but I will go with the list that I have. Is Judy Schrock here? Jeremy, you will be first, and John Stentz will be on deck. When you arrive up, please state your name and your address, and the floor is yours.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Farber. I live at 6 Swan Court. I hope this doesn't turn into a school board meeting because I live in Northern Virginia and they have police. So I moved here and we bought a house in 2020. The house needed a lot of work. We've invested quite a bit. It's right on the water. I have 3 children, 6, 8, and 10. It was always our family dream to get a house on the lake. This past summer, we bought a Malibu 23 LSV, which is a boat specifically designed for wakeboarding and wake surfing. Some of you may have seen me out there. We were out there pretty much the entire month of August, and it was great. We had a great time. We love wake surfing. It's a very nice sport for the children because you move very slowly, and if done properly, it's something that can be enjoyed by all. It was very sad in the month of August. We were out there in the middle of the week. We had a homeowner signaling to us to get away from his house over and over again. And my kids were like, what's going on? Why do they not want us here? And I said, son, I don't know. We moved here specifically because this is a small lake. We looked at houses on Lake Anna, and we liked the fact that Lake Monticello was small and had rules and people were friendly and safe. So one of the things that's concerning is that Lake Monticello has 16 committees, far more than actually, I live in Reston, which is in Northern Virginia. It's the largest HOA in the country, far more than Reston. The Water Safety Committee met 4 times in 2021 of the 12 times. I don't understand why we would want to change rules, resize the lake, when the safety committee that's putting this on isn't meeting. When I inquired about it, because obviously I was looking at the minutes, I was told, well, there's not enough people so they can't meet. Well, maybe the board needs to reduce the size of the committees, because it obviously looks like people are spread out too thin. If water safety is such a big concern that we want to eliminate either boating or activities or sizes, then I think we should reevaluate the committee and say, let's reduce the committees and let's try to channel everybody into water safety. The second point I would make is that on multiple occasions this past summer, we as boat owners doing the sports that we like, had to move off to the right or the left of the lake because kayakers were in the middle of the lake. And I think the slide that you put up was great. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of people who kayak. The one thing that I've noticed is that if you get a kayak, you get a license, there is no test that I know of. There doesn't seem to be anything. You just get it, you put the sticker on your boat, and you go out there. That to me seems to be very, very problematic. If I was going to alter the rules at all, and I'm not a big rule guy, I would say kayaks shouldn't be more than 50 feet off the shore. That keeps me as a boat owner from having to pick the right or the left when they're in the middle of the lake sitting there. Trying to think. I think that's about it. I would hope that changing the size of the lake is not on the table, because reducing the area where we can do our sports, either skiing, tubing, kayaking, whatever it is, I think that only makes it more unsafe, because now you have everybody congested into the center of the lake, and the lake's already small, as we all know. The last thing I would say is some people had commented to me that my boat is damaging their seawalls. Well, if you get riprap, it actually is great, because riprap absorbs the waves that come off a boat. They don't send them back out when you have a wood retaining wall. It sends the waves back out. And I think I bought a house on the lake. I was expecting to have to repair my seawall. I don't think if you have to repair it a little more frequently now, that you should create a big ruckus and decide the rules should be changed and I should have to get rid of my boat that I just purchased. All right? Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Very good. John Stentz and Ray Good here? If not, Greg Stamper will be on deck. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks. Hey, before I begin, I want to thank you guys for doing a great job with the snow plowing and the tree removal. It was fantastic what you guys were able to do. My name is John Stens. I live on Vine Ridge Drive on the point of Jackson Cove. To give you a little background information, I was born on a lake in New Jersey in 1948 and lived there till 1988. The lake was 3 miles by half a mile. It was a glacial lake. We also had a homeowners association, and we used to have meetings about lake safety and whether or not to change certain rules and stuff like that. We had the whole buoys, everything that this lake has, the same type of issues. People had lake walls and riprap and things like that. When I moved down here in '88, I became a boat owner. I've been water skiing, tubing, haven't been wakeboarding. I used to work with Matt and Steve McCall. We used to build lake walls. I probably have built about 40 lake walls around the lake in the coves on the main part. When I started to do this back in '88, they used to lower the lake in the wintertime. And I would find out what is the level of the lake. I would ask, how high do I build the lake walls? And they would say, take two 2x8s above the water line, go up, and then put a cap on top, which was a 2x8. And during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, these lake walls seem to have worked pretty well because there weren't that many wakes that would hit that lake wall and go over the lake wall. That is not happening anymore. I've been on people's decks, looked completely across the lake, and watched waves go over the lake walls that I have built onto people's properties 3, 4, 5 foot back onto the properties. Okay. Now, some other facts. We have a sand beach by our house. We imported the sand. And the wakes come down Jackson Cove from the north to the south. And I would, at the end of the season, go underneath my dock and take buckets of the sand and move them back to the north side. So over one summer, a lot of the sand would move. Now I have to do this 2 or 3 times every summer because of the wakes that are coming down Jackson Cove. I mean, this is just stated facts that I know. Okay, being a boat owner, we have a pontoon boat. We used to go out on most of the days, but not on weekends and Friday and Saturday because of a lot of boats being out there. We'd like to sit on the end by the dam and watch the sunsets. Most of the time, we can't even do that anymore in our boat. And the reason why is some of the wakes are so bad that if I do not turn my boat directly into those wakes, the boat rocks back and forth and knocks everything over. We have lost many dinners out there with people. The food just goes flying off the counters. The glasses get turned over. Now, no way should a wake hit the front of the boat, go over the entire chase platform and go from one end all the way to the back. This has happened to us twice this summer. The wake was so high, it went from the front of the boat all the way to the back. People sitting there had to raise their feet so that they wouldn't get wet. So these are just stated facts. I would like to ask or propose, get help on the following. 1, when the sun sets, please, no tubers, skiers, wakeboarders, or wakes. I mean, and it says sunset, it doesn't say twilight. When the sun goes down, you can't see it anymore. Please, guys, let's not be making wakes anymore so we can go out there and enjoy ourselves. Another thing I would like to propose, maybe there's a time during the week when wake boats shouldn't be out there. Maybe one day, give us maybe one day a week that we can go out in the lake safely. So that's my view on this thing. So thanks for listening to me, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Greg Stamper will be up, and Rick Roth, you'll be on deck. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. Actually, I thought originally I was going to be responding to some proposals, which there are none, at least not that I've heard of. But the one thing that I wanted to address was getting gas once at the marina. They told me that the big thing on this discussion was closing the lake from Jackson Cove back towards Beach 5, closing the wake to no wake traffic. And I was told that this was going back to 1980 because that's the way it was at that point. I don't know where that came from, and I just want to put to rest that is not true. I moved here in '81, and the people I was skiing with never mentioned anything about the lake being closed or how nice it was that the rest of the lake was being open. In fact, one of the gentlemen that I ski with has been here since '74, and he says that's never been the case. So, that's just, that's just not right. To Jeremy's point, if we do close a portion of the lake, now you're taking like a third of the lake and closing it off so that the same amount of boats are going to be in the rest of the lake. So, it's sort of like if you have 20 boats in the main portion of the lake, now it's like 27 boats, and that's just going to be more dangerous out there for anybody. Those boats, kayakers, boats are going to have to be maneuvering around each other more, and it might even be more dangerous for the swimmers, that are within 50 feet of their property line. So that just doesn't make sense. If you do the math, that's kind of a ridiculous proposal. And just the idea of it, you buy a house by a schoolyard, there are going to be kids playing there. There's going to be a certain amount of noise and activity going on. You don't try to close the schoolyard because you've now just moved in, next door. It's just one of those things. You live on a lake, there's going to be boats, there's going to be traffic. I don't understand wake surfing, at all. I'm a slalom skier. But there's no way I'm going to say, oh, Jeremy, your wake's too big, you can't go skiing, or you can't wake surf or whatever. There's plenty of room for everybody, to do what, their particular activities. A friend of mine lived, I live in Polk Cove, I'm sorry, I was supposed to say that. I live 6 Inlet Circle. So if you're looking at the main beach from the lake, there's a cove, I'm down that cove. Right across from, on that cove from the main beach, a friend of mine was asked once, man, doesn't the noise from the beach drive you crazy? What about, the megaphones from the swim team and whatever? He just smiled and said, it's music to my ears. Those kids are out there having fun. And what better good, clean fun, than water skiing with your family or even tubing or whatever. And from a skier's point of view, if you look at the lake, you've got pretty much the main lake is here. You've got the cove down by Jackson Cove going that way. And then even by the main beach, it sort of goes like this. And I'm not sure why, whether it's a wind pattern or what, but these two areas are the smoothest areas on the lake, the best for skiing, best for trying to teach somebody how to ski, especially up there past Jackson Cove. And I think part of it is not just the direction that it's facing, but because the terrain is higher. The lake on the south side, the land is just higher than the rest of the lake, and so it's protected more from the wind. So that's pristine water. You're taking away, or you would be taking away, the best part of the lake at all. The license thing was brought up. I know, I think there's a new thing every 5 years, have to take a test. That's sort of gone, or at least was delayed because of COVID, whatever. I think what I would propose as far as, if you can't do that every year, but like when somebody registers, have a little 5-question test, and even if not so much even a test, but a blank where you're filling in the blank so that somebody knows the speed limit's 35, or you have to stay away from the shoreline by 50 feet, or what the blue and orange, or the blue and white and the orange and white flags mean, so that's fresh in their minds when they get the sticker for the boat. I've got 4 seconds to spare.
To welcome up Rick Roth. And is Barry Nicholson here? Seeing he's not, Tom Smedley, you'll be on deck. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rick Roth. I live at 70 Wildwood Drive, which is actually on Monroe Cove, on the other side from where Beach 3 is. I've actually been coming to this lake since the early 80s. Bought our first piece of property here in 85. And like Jeremy, the guy that talked first, who has little kids, our kids kept coming down here too, enjoyed the lake, enjoyed tubing, enjoyed boating, learned how to ski, learned how to kayak, did a lot of water sports. The lake is core to what this place is, and the ability to enjoy that stuff is core to why people move here. I think that's sort of what Jeremy said. And restricting the ability to do that probably is counter to what we should be doing as a community. And I tell you, in the 80s, there were days when it was really crowded and rough out there too. People sort of adjust. Maybe you don't go out, but this problem or this issue, these issues have existed for a long period of time. It's not new. Yeah, there's more boats out there now, so maybe they're a little more out there more often than they were before. But I also got to tell you, there's an awful lot of times out there when it's a beautiful day and it's nice and quiet in the afternoons, even on weekends. My wife and I are sitting on the dock saying, where is everybody? Why aren't they out there having fun in the boats? So it's not something like there's no opportunities for people to enjoy it when they want something quiet or something calmer to be out on the boat. I've been out there when it's rough. I've been out there in kayaks when it's rough. If you know how to handle the boat, you know how to handle kayaks. If you're thinking about the other people out there, it's safe. I've never been concerned about safety. I think Mark mentioned that we've never had a death here. I know there's been 1 or 2 accidents in the past, and I think the biggest one, I know why it was an accident. It had nothing to do with the lake or the policies. It had something to do with just the people on the boat. But that's a different story. So what I want to say is, yeah, I think it's important to have rules. I think we have rules. I hopefully can be reminded of them a little more often. We have a great communications organization here. If maybe we do a little more outreach, a little more reminders of people that, this is a community, you should be kind to your neighbors and think about what's going on, might be helpful. Maybe a little more, I hate to say this because I know Tony's busy doing a lot of other things too, but a little bit more enforcement, and maybe it's just soft enforcement where people are out there reminding you to do this, reminding you that these are the rules, that sort of stuff. As I said, I live on Monroe Cove. I'm on the east side, so as the boats are coming east, the wakes come slamming up against my dock, knock my boat around, but I have a riprap seawall, not a problem. My boat's on whips, not a problem. Yeah, it's a little rougher out there, but that happens once in a while. That's part of living on a lake. There's maybe, I think there's a little over 500 lake lots on the lake. That's a lot. They're not all equal. Some have more exposure than others. Some are in quiet little coves, and each lot has different sort of issues. If you're out there, maybe you're getting slammed with wake, but you have great sunsets, sunrises, views. My old house was on a cove, small little cove. Nothing. Never had a ripple in there. But I also had dredging issues, not so easy to swim off the dock. So every lake lot is a little bit of a compromise. It's part of what living on a lake is. So, I think if you take care of your lot, take care of your docks, think about your boats out there, you can minimize the impact of any wake on your property. So I just wanted to offer that as a suggestion, and maybe a little more education, a little more enforcement so that people remember what's going on out there. And it's important to kind of follow the rules because it's easy to forget when you're out there floating around enjoying yourself. even though you took the test at the beginning of the year, or you actually know it, but you kind of forget it. So that's my view.
I'd like to welcome up Tom Smedley, and on deck, Peter Small. You'll be next. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. Tom Smedley from 59 Bowling Circle. I'm on Tyler Cove at the end of the cove, and what the gentleman just said, you know, we all have our own challenges. If we could keep our trash in our boat, I'd sure appreciate that at the end of the cove. But hey, been a homeowner here since 2017 and a boat owner. Been a visitor to the lake thanks to the kind graces of some great friends for several years before that. So I've got a long lens, or fairly long lens here at Lake Monticello. Certainly today we're talking about unconstrained operating environments. What is that? Those are places without lanes, without markings, without signs. We see them in the aviation environment. We see them in the maritime environment. As a retired Army aviator, I would tell you I've seen procedures and rules at a variety of airports and forward operating bases around the world. When the procedures are followed, risk mitigation is present. And that's really what we're talking about today, right? We're charged with reducing risk. We talk about the severity of the risk. We talk about the likelihood of it happening. And of course, the goal is to reduce it from high to medium to low. So it's all about risk mitigation. Now, in my community, growing up in Army aviation, when infractions occur, then we have to have some follow-on things. And that could be retraining. We have young pilots. We have young or new boat owners, right, that don't understand the rules. So, hey, maybe we need to come back around and remind you of what the speed limit is, what the distance is, et cetera. Sometimes there is correction, and we have, you know, means, and certainly in my community, to do that, where you face a board of your peers and, you know, got some really intense training, and you may not get to stay in your particular aircraft in your line of work. And then finally, there's punishment. The lake, with published procedures and a few markers that Mark showed us, has risk mitigation in place. The system of one-directional traffic, established turnaround points, known day and night speed limits, and buoys marking our no-wake coves supplement the rules of boating writ large and the lessons learned in the U.S. boating safety course. Now, we talked about a mandatory test. We talked about the iterations of that, the frequency of that, when we might do that. My first recommendation is that all test takers present their U.S. boating safety course completion card. If we require that now, that's great. I haven't taken my test. I'm at year 5. I've got to do that. But you can go to the Virginia website. It's not something that there's a cost, but it would educate all boaters on the rules of the road. The giving way of the, the sailboat or the canoe always takes precedence over the sailboat, which always takes precedence over the motorboat, et cetera, right? There are rules of the road, and the U.S. boating safety course kind of gives you a foundational framework for that. So I think we could add that prior to taking the written test at the marina. The real concern is the enforcement of the existing procedures and the actions for those boaters who are outside the limits of these rules, the left and right limits. The summer of 2020 with a uniformed officer on the lake was a great idea. I know there are manpower concerns. We can't solve that today, but I really believe there was a perception when the Water Safety Patrol had a uniformed officer out there, things just seemed to be a little calmer, a little safer. Establishing a well-known method to report boating rules violation could help. Now, nobody likes to tattle on their neighbor, but when I see a boater doing donuts in front of Main Beach for the tubing behind them, I wish I could let someone know so that someone could find the boater and inform them of the infraction and tell them about the increasing ramifications of that, a warning, a fine, or the removal of the ability to use the lake, perhaps maybe for the season, right? As to the concerns of the western turnaround point, I would echo what others says. It is well marked and well known. If someone violates the procedures and encroaches on the distance from dock limits, then that homeowner or other boater should take a picture and report it. There will be a wake. Caveat emptor, I believe, is the Latin of what the gentleman just said when buying property. You bought it at the turnaround point, there will be a lot of traffic. So in summary, we have some great rules. We have some tests. We could add to the knowledge base in front of that test. We could develop some kind of way to report the infractions so that maybe a uniformed officer, maybe the water safety patrol who's on the radio from the marina could find that boater and say, hey, you know, and it doesn't have to be confrontational. I've been pulled over once. You know, hey, we got a report that you were doing donuts in the middle of the lake. We have a traffic pattern. Please adhere to it. Have a great day boating. Thanks so much for your time.
Peter Small, welcome him up, and Tom King, you'll be on deck.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Just a little bit about me. I live at 10 Leisure Court. It's a cove with no name. It's a little one. It is. I'm wasting time. Just to tell you a bit about me, obviously I'm from England. I am a qualified RYA boating instructor for both powerboats, for sailboats, for sail racing, and also a British Canoe Union kayak instructor. I've also worked as safety officer for many marine vessels, both super yachts and merchant marine vessels. I've got a good safety background, that's basically what I'm saying, and I worked with Tom for a number of years on the Water Safety Patrol as a supervisor. My points I'd like to raise is the first thing, I agree with most everything everyone said. The buoys, moving those, that is totally against any safety procedures I've ever heard of. You've got so many boats on the lake, you compress them into a smaller area. I like our 0 fatalities. I don't want that to change. I think that that is an open invitation for that to change. The other thing I've heard about that, which is slightly more concerning, and no one has mentioned it, is that the conversation I heard was that the proposal was to move the buoy from where it is now, this is the western turnaround, to pretty well the entrance of the Beach 4 Cove, which I think is Jackson Cove. That, again, doesn't make sense to me. You're putting a turnaround buoy where boats are coming out, where boats are coming in. The turnaround is where tubers, skiers, they're going to come off. You've got a boat trying to join the traffic pattern, not knowing where people are coming from. That's not safe. That really is not safe. I'm sorry. So, the next thing. One thing I'm a little bit concerned about or confused about is erosion versus safety. If we're talking about waves, we're talking about waves with safety, or we're talking about erosion. I'm not sure which we're talking about. I don't see anyone from the ECC here. I don't know whether that's a conversation we're having. Maybe you can... I don't know. But generally, the water sports enthusiasts, and I consider myself water sports enthusiasts, we are very responsible. We know that we've got somebody behind us, and if that person falls in, we know we have to get them back safely and efficiently. A lot of people I see do these high power turns. That creates a wake much bigger than a wakeboarder does. Let's have some education on how you safely retrieve your skier. Skiing, wakeboarding, wake surfing, we're all going in a straight line. We are very predictable. We are very slow generally. Wake surfing, I think, is 10 to 11 miles an hour. Skiing is probably 25 miles an hour max. We are nowhere near the speed limits. We are going slowly. We are going predictably. Yes, I agree. Let's keep away from the shoreline a little bit to let the wake mitigate as it goes towards the shore. But, you know, I worry that if we start banning activities like that, we're going down a slippery slope. The lake is known outside of the community for having a lot of rules and regulations. We add more. They are ones that people can see are actually ruining their potential enjoyment of using the water. Is that going to affect property values? That's my concern. My other concern that hasn't been raised is that, you know, one gentleman in particular and another of others have spent a lot of money on a wake surf boat. I just wouldn't want to see anybody suddenly have to start saying, well, what am I going to do with my boat now that I can't use it? Would the board be open to liabilities from it? Who knows? I don't know. It just concerns me. And finally, really, kayakers. I love kayaking. I really do. But I fully agree, kayakers can go out on the water without any training, without any education. As a kayak instructor, I would never, ever let one of my students go on that lake until I knew they could recover themselves from a capsize. That's the minimum requirement. Let's have some education. Let's maybe have a test. Somebody has mentioned the state requirements. Let's fall under the auspices of the Virginia Safety Code. Let's make that a requirement for having a boating license, that you have taken and passed the Virginia Boater Safety Code. I think that's it, really. Education, enforcement. You know, let's not add more rules. Let's just stick with the ones we've got, teach people how to use them. Maybe offer training courses for people. How do you drive your boat? How do you do it safely? Let's just all enjoy ourselves. I think that's it. Thank you. That sounded terrible, didn't it?
I'd like to welcome up Tom King. And before Tom joins us, let me just backtrack. Judy Strock here. Thank you. I'll call you next. You'll be on deck. Ray Good. You'll be up after Judy. Tom, it's yours. Welcome.
My name is Tom King. I live at 13 Wisteria Way, but I'm actually on Westlake Forest. We have a corner lot, and you all know what kind of a problem that can be sometimes for mailmen and others to find you. Anyway, our boat is located at the very end slip on Beach 3. So, in other words, we're closest to the mouth of Monroe Cove. And my issue is very simple. Our boats all along Beach 3, the dock there, of course, you know, they get racked by some of the waves that come by, and that's unavoidable, and I get that. But what isn't unavoidable is people coming in well within 50 feet of the end of those docks. Now, they're 50 feet or more from shore, but they're closer than 50 feet from the end of the dock. They're cutting the corner as they go zipping into Monroe Cove, and then they don't bother to power down until they're well past the no-wake buoy. And I frankly just, you know, I just think that's dangerous. And if I had a camera or something, you know, I might be able to document this just to prove what I'm talking about. But at any rate, I just think that some way needs to be established, or people just need to be reminded that when they're passing in front of a dock, you know, a series of boats along a dock, they really need to stay a little bit further away than, you know, 30 feet or 40 feet, and they need to slow down. And it would be helpful if they would slow down to close to no wake speed as they're passing in front of the docks, and then make their turn into the cove. But certainly, I mean, I've seen boats come in, not necessarily passing right in front of the dock, but just coming into Monroe Cove. I've seen them come in so fast that when they finally power down, the boat's rocking like this because it was moving. It was so low in the water as it was powering in past that buoy. So anyway, that was my only concern that I wanted to bring up tonight. Thank you.
All right. We'll head back to the top of the list. Judy, we'll welcome you up. And then Ray Good. So for those of you that are coming in, when you come up here, like I said, please come to the side. Introduce yourself, your name and your address, and this will be yours. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you. So my name is Treble. It's Judy Strock, and I live at 21 Old Homestead Circle, located in Section 2. Water safety and property damage as it relates to boating here at the lake is not a new topic. But we are not the lake of 40 years ago. We have more homes on the water, more people enjoying the lake, both in it and on it, and more powerful boats on the water, some of which are producing wakes up to 3 times the size of boats from the past. My dock is located directly across from the high-speed turn buoy between Jackson Cove and Van Buren Cove, which I believe is now the most dangerous section of the lake as it relates to water safety, property damage, and the general health of the lake. Many boaters are not adhering to our no wake. We actually have a rule within 75 feet from shore, and they're traveling at full speed when they're as close as 20 to 40 feet from shore. They're swinging wide in preparation to make this turn at full throttle. When swimming in the water, I dare not turn my head away from the direction of the approaching boats for fear of being overrun. This boating practice is just as dangerous to the kids and skiers being pulled around by these boats. This is an extremely dangerous situation. The current speeding and turn activity of boats using this area is subjecting the docks and shoreline along this stretch to unusual and excessive wake damage. Each speeding boat produces wakes that are hitting both sides of the shoreline multiple times. It's not uncommon for wakes to be over 2 feet and actually go over the docks. This last 4th of July, a 300-pound wooden stairway was ripped away from my dock just as a result of the constant battering of waves. Other neighbors have had to reinforce their shorelines and repair their docks as well. I have 3 requests that I believe will make the lake safer for everyone. My first, I'm shaking, sorry. The first is the entrance to Van Buren Cove should be redefined to begin at Jackson Cove and then subsequently marked with a 5-mile-per-hour buoy. The width of the waterway at this location is actually as narrow as some of our other cove entrances that are already being protected by no-wake buoys. This narrow section of lake should not be used to support high-speed turn. I'm asking you to consider what the full impact of making this change would be. Would boaters be losing a half a mile from the current high-speed path? Well, yes, but this change doesn't prevent them from enjoying the wider main lake for skiing and pulling their kids on floats. Adding this half a mile to Van Buren Cove benefits all those folks who currently are enjoying kayaking, paddle boating, sailboating, fishing, swimming off their docks, swimming off their anchored boats. In fact, anyone who simply enjoys slow cruising on the lake will have that much more space to enjoy their activities. It also goes without saying that all property owners along this stretch would now be protected from further wake and the costs associated with that damage. My second thought is to modify Chapter 6, Section B, Item 3B, to change the 5-mile-per-hour boat speed provision, which is currently set at 75 feet from shore, to 100 feet from shore. While this push away from shore won't eliminate all property damage being caused by boat wakes, it may help reduce the impact. More importantly, it would give the people that are on the lake and not in a powered vessel a little more room to enjoy whatever activity they're doing. The state law requires that no wake be allowed within 50 feet from shore, docks, people, and other vessels. Since we're allowed to swim within 50 feet of our property, that means boats should not be allowed to produce any wake within 100 feet of shore. This law, whether we change it or not, needs to be enforced. Publishing the rules is clearly not enough to ensure that people boat responsibly. Okay, my last thing is to allow property owners the ability to mark their swimming area along the 50-foot line with floats. By having this precaution, it would protect the folks who are swimming and floating in the water from boats that are traveling too close to shore. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. Ray, is Barry Nicholson here? The reason I'm reading these names, unless you signed up, you don't have a spot. So I have Ray Good. Welcome.
Again, I'm Ray Good at 9 Whippoorwill Court. And I guess I've been accused by my family and my wife of probably being the person who spends the most time in the community on the lake. And that may actually be true. I probably may be guilty as charged. And that's a great thing. That's why I moved here. Right? I mean, it's a great lake. It's a lot of things you can do in it. We kayak, we canoe, we tube, we ski, we wakeboard. We do a lot of different things. And that's why we came here. But I have become concerned over the years. I came here in 2009 that it seems like there are more boats, bigger boats, and I guess I've become particularly concerned about the wake boats, particularly when they're wake surfing. And I hadn't really thought all that much about it until a friend of mine's boat tipped over as a result of, a wake. So I'm like, okay, it was his boat, big guy, small boat, but, I don't know, what the issue was. But then I was out skiing just this last summer, and I was getting close to the turnaround, and I realized, the boat in front of me, I'm not going to be able to get around him safely. So I throttled down and dropped my skier, turned around to come back and get him, and then I was caught. I've got a 21-foot boat. That's a pretty good-sized boat. And I thought my boat was frankly going to turn over when we hit the wake of the wake surfer who just passed us. And that's a big boat, and it's got a gunnel, like 2 or 3 feet high. And I was frankly scared that our boat was going to take on water. Another event, I was having dinner with a friend who has his shoreline isn't riprap, it's the boardwalk, the planking there, and a wake boat comes by and the wave comes over the dock. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's a pretty good sized wave. So I did a little research and looked around, and this isn't the only lake that's having questions and concerns about excessive weight, okay? Other places have limited it. The regulation that I found that was most interesting was typically 150 feet is what's recommended for wake surfing. And it's apparently backed up by some pretty good science for the wake dissipation, and the amount of distance. Curiously, our lake is about 300 feet wide in most places, which would effectively, if you enforced that rule on our lake, you couldn't wake surf at all, basically. So I don't know that that's the answer, but I think it's something at least to be concerned and consider that is how severe, other places that are restricting it are taking that position. So again, I don't have any great idea on that, but I do encourage more safety on the lake, more education for people who are boating, it is concerning that, again, more boats, bigger boats, are really not a good idea for safety. So,
Thank you, Ray. One last check. Is Barry Nicholson here? Seeing that, we've exhausted our list of speakers. I want to thank each of you for taking time from your schedule to participate, to prepare your notes. As a former Toastmaster, I'm particularly proud that you all hit the 5-minute mark. Good work. And so we'll begin wrapping this up. Where do we go from here? I have a few more slides we can kind of walk through. So where do we go? We've heard a variety of topics on the lake, on things that are being consideration, on residents' concerns, and boat operators' concerns as well. This is all good input, and I applaud you for taking time from your schedules to prepare this evening. Where we got to this, when we talked a little bit coming in, the Water Safety Patrol had made a recommendation to the board that we hold this forum, because there are a lot of opinions and a lot of concerns about these topics. The board approved that, and that is why we are here tonight. This is the starting point for dialogue on this conversation. The Water Safety Control has had several things. And these are not new topics. I want to give you the ladies and gentlemen that sit on these committees have studied these. They've had a lot of input from you. I also offer you the opportunity to participate in these committees or show up at their meetings to express input on this. Consider, who's running this show? See what I got to deal with? God, that is a former manager left me all this stuff. Anyway, so they've been considering for some time, and with input from the community, the repositioning of buoys and that impact, the water safety rules and how often to test and what needs to be considered, and discussion on wake boat operations. So these are topics that these committees examine. They do research on it. They have safety people they talk with. And so it's an ongoing conversation here at the lake within these committees. I applaud their efforts, and I ask for your participation in these forums as well. Next slide. So what's next? Where do we go from here? Thank you for your input. Thank you for your time. These comments will be brought into the Safety and Security Committee, the Lake Monticello Police Department, the Water Safety Patrol Group. Those committees will have dialogue, discussion, and more research on those, and they will provide, at some point in the future, a motion to our Board of Directors. Now, I want to come back on this because a lot of people are always concerned, I missed this. This is the last shot I get at this. And it's not. As we go through this, these motions, when they are proposed to the board, the community is also afforded an opportunity to participate in discussion at that time, at the different readings. So if you missed it tonight and you want to have another opportunity when the board agenda reflects that there'll be a reading of a particular motion, there's also an opportunity to contact the board and ask to speak on these topics. So there are plenty of times to revisit these things through this process. The board will act on motions, they'll vote, there'll be debate, dialogue, discussion. So we want to make sure that you have other opportunities to visit with the committee, and then as these committees submit motions to the board, to voice your opinion or express your viewpoint on these things. Yeah, last slide. That it? That's it. How about that? Ran out of slides. So we thank you for your time tonight. I want to particularly applaud you for allowing the speakers to have their moment and their opinions heard. So often in today's times, there's a lot of tension out there, and the world's kind of a challenging place. But there's a reason why people come to this community. It's a great community. We support each other. Do we always get along? No. But some days are better than others. But we have a great community. We have great amenities, our golf course, our community itself, the lake. These are all things that we want to protect and make sure that our residents and the members of the community enjoy it. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, the committees, and Tom, I thank you for your attendance tonight, and please be safe going home. Thank you.